guys, welcome back. It's time again for another 8 Byte podcast. I got a range of different topics to go over this month, from wrestling to video games and a little bit everything in between. So let's jump right into it. First off, I want to talk about Survivor Series. So as all of you probably saw, with the last Survivor Series, there's been the eagerly anticipated return of the mighty Goldberg. Holy crap, who saw this coming? Never I would have ever expected to see in a 2 year period to see the return of Sting and Goldberg. I mean, talk about just really reaching back into the WCW archives. But man, what an exciting time to be watching wrestling again. And in the past few years, I never actually thought that I would say that. So, in one of the best bookings, but strangest decided outcomes that I've seen in a long time, we saw Goldberg booked up against none other than the Beast, Brock Lesnar. And what an incredible match. Everybody was so psyched to see, and I was pretty interested in it myself. I really didn't think Goldberg could stand much of a chance, even though he was in, really, really good shape for being 52 years old, which just kind of goes to show when you look at, Undertaker, and then you look at someone like Goldberg, it's like, man, Undertaker's, even though he's my favorite wrestler, you can really see how he's sitting on his laurels, and Goldberg is just like, wow. I mean, aside from some gray hairs, he looks identical to when he was wrestling in the late 90s. So anyway, the match starts out, and, we see Lesnar come out to the ring first and strut around, the ring. And, then we see Goldberg come out, and they're squaring off, and you can feel the tension rising. And Lesnar just, rams into Goldberg and rams him into the corner, and really gets in his face, and it looks like it's just going to be, Suplex City and, F5 Town, and it looks like Lesnar's just going to destroy, Goldberg, who hasn't been in the ring in like 12 to 15 years. But, within a matter of seconds, Goldberg just shoves him down, pushes it off like it's nothing, and then within another matter of seconds, hits him with a spear. You see Brock gasping for air and trying to get back up. When he gets back to his feet, gets hit with another spear. At this point, you see Paul Heyman outside is livid, begging to beg Goldberg off and pleading with him, not to essentially end his meal ticket, the great beast Lesnar. And Goldberg is just circling Lesnar, and you can just feel, the end is coming. Lesnar gets to his feet. You can tell he's having a lot of hard time breathing, as we found out later. He broke a couple of ribs with that really vicious spear from a still very, very, built and, muscularly packed and strong Goldberg, 260, almost 300 pounds of muscle crashing into him. And he would set Goldberg up for a jackhammer and just done. Just ended it. So did not see that coming. Really didn't. I'm really surprised at the booking of that. Lesnar, he's kind of been like the one or two times a year main eventer recently, because even when he's in UFC and when he's in WWE, he can't go for very long. I love him. Lesnar's one of my favorite wrestlers. Don't get me wrong. I'm not here to badmouth Brock, but within 10 minutes, his face is bright red. He is out of breath. Even against a completely worn down Undertaker, he had nothing, left in the tank last Mania after like 10 minutes. And I was like, wow. I'm like, actually, no, I'm sorry. It wasn't Mania, because that was him against Shane. But anyway, the last time that him and Undertaker went, which I think was SummerSlam. I'm really having a hard time remembering here, guys. Sorry about that. But you just see Lesnar, he uses up his stamina reserves really, really quickly. So, he's a lot of, beef and muscle, but it just doesn't last. That's why his matches are really quick. 'Cause if he doesn't end it quickly, he can't go. He could never go like a 30-minute or a 60-minute Iron Man match. It would just, be the end of him. When for that length of time. I mean, that's why I think honestly, even pound for pound, Cena is a better wrestler than Lesnar every day of the week because Cena has the stamina. What he lacks in raw strength, even though Cena's a powerful guy, um, Cena can and has gone the distance every single time, whether you like him for being a face or not. I mean, you have to give him his credit. So anyway, everybody's so shocked about Goldberg coming out of like a dusty book out of a library, coming in and just decimating Lesnar. So why? Why would they decide to book Lesnar losing to to Goldberg? Well, I can see this as yet another build to Mania, which I think is disgraceful, honestly. That Lesnar has in his contract, I think he only needs to do between 2 and 4 major pay per views a year, so it's just an excuse for him to take an easy injury, take a few months off, and rest before Mania. And I think that, God Almighty, I think that they're going to probably be putting Goldberg up against Taker in Mania, or you might even see some type of three-way. I don't know. I think that you're going to see within the next 2 Manias, it has to be Undertaker's last Mania, and I think they're really trying to gear up something special to where, like, okay, Lesnar beat Taker, Goldberg beat Lesnar. Now, who's the one that comes out of this, like, fatal three-way of, like, he was the one that beat the one and 1 in 21, and now Goldberg's the one that beat the one that beat the streak, and it's like, you know, wouldn't that be awesome if Taker somehow pulls, something out of his ass and beats them both and his streak is gone, but he's still avenged. His streak is avenged by Goldberg defeating Lesnar, and then, by defeating them both, it still keeps him intact. So I kind of see something like that gearing up. I mean, maybe not 100%, but that'd be a cool way to do it. So yeah, that was a very shocking result for Survivor Series, but hey, what are you going to do? Like I say, I don't really think Brock is all that he's cut out to be. I think he's kind of mediocre at best and well beyond his prime. So, pound for pound, I definitely think Goldberg is the better man, and he certainly proved it. All right, so once again, let's take a look at the NES Classic Edition. Well, I wish I could. I can't get a hold of one anywhere. These things are sold out everywhere. And that's because, once again, Nintendo decided to limit quantities to see if it was going to, sell as well as they expected it. I don't understand why they did this to begin with, because they didn't really open up a lot of pre-orders in the first place. So Nintendo being so market shy as they always are with amiibos and stuff like that, I don't see why they just don't open up more pre-orders, and then they don't have to worry about limiting quantities and being like, oh, it's doing good, now let's come out with a patch or come out with a Famicom release in the US or a Super NES clone or something like that. But there's been a lot of crazy controversy with this thing so far, like with companies releasing controllers that don't work and are only designed for the Wii or Wii U that are just quick cash-ins. You have Retro VGS that was apparently behind a cheat code book for a company that produced the NES Advantage for the Wii and Wii U and was supposed to be for the Classic Edition, as well as a TurboFire standard controller for the Classic Edition that has like all the wrong games and wrong codes, and it's like, holy shit, Mike Kennedy, like, just stop, dude, stop. It's getting out of hand. Like, just, you've lost all credibility as far as, the gaming pop culture industry goes. But aside from that, just looking at the NES Classic Edition in and of itself, I've noticed a few concerns that people have had, and I kind of wanted to address some of those. From what I've seen, the most major concern that I see people complaining about is, oh my god, the controller's so short. It's only 2 feet long. I cannot believe the controller is only 2 feet long. Blah, 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 blah. People do not seem to understand the purpose of the NES Classic Mini. Now, just by knowing and seeing what Miyamoto and everything have done over the years, over the course of, their experiences with Nintendo, whether they're revamping Zelda or coming out with Mario Maker, they always go back to their roots into where, they want to make it a fun experience, to where they want to still make Zelda feel like it was when, he had his original views of Zelda, of exploring, and I really think that comes back to what the Nintendo was all about. You have to remember the Nintendo, or originally being released as the Famicom in Japan, started out with short cords and was a small system, that you really had to be right next to in order to play your games. They decided to go away from that when they made the US version of the NES and made a longer controller, but I think that that's still the core element of the system. They want people to feel that you're still playing the exact same thing as you would be with a regular gray toaster NES, and that is that when we were kids, you had to get up, you had to hit that reset button, you had to put another card in, you had to actually be physically near your console. So since this is a mini version of that, and obviously you're not changing carts or anything like that, and you do need to hit the power and reset button to switch between menus and games and things like that, I think that's the point. If they just put that on a controller, you'd feel disconnected from the actual mini Nintendo unit, and it really wouldn't feel like you were revisiting your childhood and playing your NES. But the fact that you have to sit up close to your TV, like so many of us did when we were growing up, and actually interact with this little miniature Nintendo device, I think that gives a much more genuine experience, and that's what they're going for. I really don't see how everybody's missing the big picture with that. Yeah, sure, it's annoying that you have to sit up close, but don't we all remember doing that, sitting on the floor and looking up at the TV and being 2 feet away from your Nintendo? So give them a little leeway on that. I think that's really cool that they're still trying to keep some of that imaginative design with the classic edition. I also think that coming up very very soon, probably before next summer, I think that you're going to see an update with the NES Classic Edition. I think that you're going to see a patch as to where the charging cable that comes with it that plugs into the wall, which is a USB-B micro cable, that's something you can actually transfer data to and from with your computer. Now, the chip inside the NES Mini, it is locked out from any backdoor entry to be able to hack the system and kind of do like a Raspberry Pi thing and gain pirate root or ROM emulation access to it. But that doesn't mean that you can't download a patch that is specifically designed from Nintendo to free up the extra space on that chip. Because I believe it's 250 megabytes or gigabytes. I don't remember the actual size, but it's definitely 250. I think it's megabytes. I don't think it's gigabytes. Even so, that's a huge amount of space for just the ROMs. I mean, most ROMs are under like 2 megabytes. So you could fit another 50 to 100 games, even more than that on there. So I definitely think you're going to see NES release another bundle to where you can like go online to their servers or somehow download it, pay for it, have an authorization code, and then download more games onto your system. Because otherwise, it's a lot of time and investment to develop this console and just leave it lie dead in the water. And Nintendo, they kind of have a bad record for doing that to begin with, of not supporting systems. Like, look at the Wii U, and now that that's finally done. I mean, they did back it a little bit, but they left it, kind of just like on a life preserver out in the middle of the ocean for a while, where it barely got any support. You see their Mitomo app, where they just were like, okay, we're done with it, hope you had fun, and just like left it there until they finally decided to give it an update and kind of support it. So I think that'll shake a lot of consumer confidence if they do the same thing again with the Nintendo Classic. If they're just like, oh yeah, that's it, it's just 30 games and the hell with it, we're not doing anything else. I think that in the future that'll be a bad move, because then a lot of people who buy a lot of Nintendo products will be like, oh, well, I don't want to get this for the Switch, or maybe even get the Switch, because how long is their customer support going to last for it? How long are they going to support this product? So I would think that'd be a bad move, and I totally see them, still going with the Switch, and still keeping it up. All right, and now let's take a little look at Pokemon Sun and Moon. Now, Pokemon Sun and Moon, since its release, has done phenomenal. It's actually done more sales than any Mario or Zelda release game ever to date, which is unbelievable. And that absolutely and obviously has to be credited to Pokemon Go's success over the past year and hyping up what you can do in the new Pokemon Sun and Moon, and rumors about that there's characters that you can find through Pokemon Go and in Sun and Moon and vice versa. And they changed a lot of the dynamics of how you play Pokemon Sun and Moon, mainly with the new island of Alola, which I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And that's supposed to be kind of like a Pokemon version of like Hawaii, like Honolulu or something like that. And there's all these new Pokemon that you can find on Alola. You can up upgrade and evolve them, into their different evolutions. And one of the craziest ones that I saw on there was uh, what's his name? Executor. I always have a hard time pronouncing his name. And now, like, his neck is stretched like 100 miles in the air, and he's this giant tropical palm tree, and just I'm like, oh my god, like with Executor, I'm like, what did they do to him? Like, he looks so crazy. But it looks really cool. They have a lot of really interesting side missions and puzzles and quests now, but they're more than just like filler, like in other Pokemon versions, where to just like evolve your Pokemon or to find new foods and baits and things like that. They actually tie in to like a gym leader and will prepare you for when you battle certain higher level Pokemon and higher level gym leaders, which I think is really cool. So it really adds to the story element of your journey throughout the island of Alola, which is really cool. And I honestly haven't had a chance to play the new Pokemon Sun and Moon, but it does really look fun. I had a lot of fun playing Pokemon Go, and I think that Pokemon Sun and Moon is going to be another great installment in the Pokemon series. All right, and moving right along, let's also talk about Final Fantasy 15. As you may well know, Final Fantasy 15 was just recently announced and has done okay. It's honestly done a lot better on Steam so far with digital downloads and is doing pretty decently on PS4. Now, I've seen some screenshots of it, and I don't own an next gen console myself. And from what I've seen from Final Fantasy 15, at its core, it looks like a very, very solid installment of the Final Fantasy series. I don't recall the main character's name, but he's your typical Final Fantasy character with swooshed up, spiked hair to one side, and there's some last crystal that he has to protect now from it's like a couple hundred years in the future of Midgar, so I don't remember this a term. It's like Midgard Midgardsmore or something. I don't know. So who the hell knows what happened to the city of Midgar? So they're going through that again, and pretty much everything's the same that you remember. The summons are all there. They look amazing. The graphics, the backgrounds look amazing. The real-time strategy battles are great. They're there again to where your meter builds up and you have to wait before you can cast a spell. I don't know if they've included anything that resembles materia in this or not, but I kind of have a feeling that they did because this is a really a throwback to FF7. It's almost an FF7 clone, really. Like it's just like a redo of like 200 years in the future, which is kind of cool. The only thing that I really have a problem with that, though, is so far from what I've seen with the story, it really looks lame. I mean, these characters just look completely unrelatable and ridiculous. I mean, it looks like Grand Theft Final Fantasy. There's this one chick that has like the Kill Bill jacket with her cleavage showing and like some stupid snapback cap, and like these other bros up there with like leather jackets and like tats and stuff. I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, I get it. Like Final Fantasy's always had like the weird fashion, but I think it's kind of made it too much about that. And like, there's this car that they're riding up, which looks kind of like a mashup between like an Escalade and the Batmobile. And I've never felt so disconnected from a game. Like this is like such a millennial version of like Final Fantasy, and it looks really, really douchey. Like I just don't know why they had to change the look of it, so much as to where it's something that feels so familiar, but also feels worlds apart. Um, and it's not really creative if you're just taking elements from like current pop culture and stuff like that, and throwing them into a game and like, oh, here's your new races and species and like characters and costumes. Like, I'd rather see what they did in I think it was Final Fantasy 13, where you had like that one race of people where like they had like the rabbit ears, like there's that one lady and stuff. And like that was really cool. That's so much more creative. Wait, no, I'm sorry. That was 12. Final Fantasy 12. I'm thinking of. Um, so overall, I really think the story looks lacking, and I think that it might end up being a solid installment in the Final Fantasy series, but they've got a long way to go to prove it to me. I mean, it's nice that the graphics and everything are all there, but you have to have characters that you can relate to, and you can't just regurgitate another series success and just try to ride in on the coattails of that. We've seen so many movies over the past that just feel that they can do that, as long as they give a little nod, they'll be like, oh, hey, people won't notice that this isn't, as high under with quality control as it should be because, we're doing so much like things they already like. There's summons there, there's this there, there's Midgar is there from the old city, so they feel like they don't need to do anything with that, and that's a huge flaw. So I would have rather seen them go in a newer and perhaps stranger direction with this series and go someplace new and different and exciting. And maybe it might not have done so well, maybe it would have, but at least that creativity is what the whole Final Fantasy series is about. Not just constantly regurgitating a series of crazy, wild, spiky hair and oversized swords. Had to give it a little more time for, to see how this actually does. IGN so far has given it a rating of around 8.2. I'm going to have to get my hands on a copy of this myself and give it a playthrough, and I'll let you guys know what I think. Alright guys, well that's going to do it for this month's edition of the 8byte Podcast. Remember, if you have any topics that you want to hear me talk about on the next podcast, just use that hashtag at 8byte Podcast, and I'll see you guys next month. Later!
Hey guys, if you liked the video that you just watched, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. And if you do the Facebook or Twitter thing, follow me at hashtag #KingOfRetro. See you next time!